Hey y'all, what is going on? What is going on? It's your girl, Melba Pearson, the resident legal diva, and it is time for another Mondays with Melba. So, we're staying in the theme of getting you election ready. We know that the general election is November 5th, and it is coming quickly. So, on the ballot this year in Florida includes Amendment 4, which would basically bring reproductive rights into the Florida Constitution.
Mhm.
I'm voting yes, but don't just take my word for it. I want to bring on somebody who has been in the trenches in this work, Aaron Bos-Lun, who I just adore. Welcome back to Mondays with Melba, Aaron.
Well, it's not a Monday till we're at Mondays with Melba, so I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you, my friend. So, share a little bit. You're no stranger to our audience, of course, but share a little bit about yourself and what you're doing now, and a little bit more about Men4Choice, your role there, and what the goal is, basically.
Yeah, no, I lived in Miami since 2012. I came here as a public school teacher, and I taught a class from their freshman through their senior year, so 4 years teaching in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I went to graduate school in 2016, and I was thinking about what does it look like to do work at that next level of scale, because when you're teaching, and I started to really feel this around year 3, you can do what you can for the kids in your classroom, but what about the kids in the next classroom, and what about the next school, and what about the next city, and so forth. And so I went into graduate school with all of those questions in my head about what does making a difference at scale look like. And Donald Trump got elected president while I was in graduate school, which made me quickly want to get back in the fight, and started working in politics and organizing. And Men4Choice came across my radar in 2019. I remember getting an email that said Men4Choice, which had been an Illinois-based organization, was about to expand nationally, had a lot of success getting men off of the sidelines and into the fight in Illinois, that they were expanding nationally. And I had this moment that I think a lot of people do when they hear about Men4Choice for the first time, where I said, I'm a pretty civic-minded, political-minded, justice-minded sort of person, and I've been active on advocating for public schools and for unions and racial justice, and go down the line. There were a lot of ways I felt like I was trying to do my part, and I couldn't remember the last time that as a man I'd said anything on this most fundamental right to control your own body, even though I was pro-choice. And so that led me to get involved with the organization. And the last 4 years, and in particular since Roe was overturned, the ongoing organizing we've done to train young men in particular, but men to get off the sidelines and into the fight as allies for reproductive freedom, has become really timely. So we have an ongoing organizing model where we train 18 to 28-year-old men. We also focus on digital communications and sort of culture change work through getting a different message out there that men should step up on this, shouldn't stand passively by. And finally, we're active at campaigns like right now, supporting pro-choice candidates that our partners have identified, and supporting initiatives, of course, like Yes on 4, which is so important, not just for the more than 20 million people in the state of Florida, but for the whole southeastern U.S., because of how extreme so many abortion bans throughout the South are, unfortunately, including currently in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad to see what has happened since the fall of Roe. And again, I've been beating this drum from the beginning. I was just like, my concern about the former president's, candidacy at the time was the Supreme Court.
Yep.
And I did not want to be right on that one. I did not want to be right, but I knew that he was going to appoint some very right leaning judges that were going to erode basic rights that we have taken for granted for so long. So, can you share a little bit more about why men should get off the sidelines and why reproductive access is not just a women's issue?
Yeah. Well, no one knows better than the resident legal diva what's at stake when the wrong people get put into positions of legal power, and it's been devastating, and it's been devastating in very concrete ways in people's lives, like Anya Cook and her husband Derek, and Deborah Dorbert, and Josh and Amanda Zarowski over in Texas. But why should men care? Well, the first reason, and the most important, I think, is that despite the kind of way we talk about this issue, the majority, where we think about it as a women's issue, the majority of men in this country are pro-choice, And there actually isn't that much of a gender divide when it comes to this issue. More than 60%, 60%, and by some measures that number has gone up since Roe was overturned, of men in this country are pro-choice. And only 19% of Americans believe that abortion should be totally illegal without exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, the kind of ban that has now become standard practice in Florida and other states. So it raises the question of how does a minority with a viewpoint this extreme that only has the backing of 19% of the population manage to pass this sort of laws? And I think there's two answers. One is that they're hyper organized, well funded, and have been working at this for 50 years. And that's not like conspiracy talk. Like, go back and look at the publicly available documents and the things they're saying on TV in the 1970s about the long-term plan that it would take to overturn Roe v. Wade, which came to fruition in 2022. And so one reason is that to that 19%, this is their number one issue. And the other reason, I think, is that half of the people in the country who hold the pro-choice position, who believe in that basic freedom that everyone should control their own body, are men. And yet, if you go to any pro-choice rally, event, action, you knock on doors for Yes on 4, you're going to see 90% of the people there are women and directly impacted people. And it's even stranger because if you look across the street at the sort of weird counter protesters who will be there talking about how concerned they are with babies, even though they don't support any policies that actually support babies or children, except for forcing women to give birth, 90% of those people will be men. And so why is it that men are so active on this issue, but only if they're trying to control women's bodies? And there's something fundamentally off there. And so the first reason men should step up is that men are already there. We believe that it is not the right of the government to interfere in private medical decisions. We believe in supporting the women we love, whether that's wives or whether that's mothers, grandmothers, sisters, friends. And we also realize that we're stakeholders with something to lose. That if the government has the power to control your wife's body, how are you more free? And if you're an LGBT man like I am, the people who are going after reproductive rights and the people who are going after LGBT rights, that Venn diagram is a circle. So there's no world in which going after abortion rights makes men more free. It makes men less free. And it raises the question of, faced with that this is affecting the bodies of people we love, that this is violating our beliefs, and that ultimately this even infringes on our freedoms and our ability to live our lives in full ways and plan families the way individuals want to, not Ron DeSantis. Given all of those things, why aren't men stepping up is the better question than why should they? And that's the work that we do.
Amazing, amazing. So, who are your biggest champions in this work? I know you mentioned Darren Cook. I know his story with his wife Anya was just gut wrenching. And
Mhm.
folks, if you haven't seen it, I will drop a link in the chat in terms of just so that folks can know their story and their pain. But some of who are the faces, I would say, of this campaign. Some of your biggest champions for Men for
Yeah.
Choice.
I think some of the most powerful advocates are the men who saw their wives suffer under abortion bans, because then it takes it from the kind of soaring rhetoric about protecting life to showing, if you'll forgive my language, what bullshit the actual agenda of the anti-choice movement is. Derek Cook, for example, is a man in Margate, Florida, and his wife Anya suffered a devastating miscarriage at 16 weeks of pregnancy. And it wasn't just that she got to the hospital and got the news that she'd lost the pregnancy that she wanted so badly and that they wanted as a couple so badly. The next thing she was told was that miscarriage would happen in 12 to 24 hours, and there was nothing the doctors could do because they were afraid of being criminally prosecuted or investigated by the state after, losing their license, facing huge fines, or going to jail. And less than 24 hours after that, it was about 12 hours after that, she nearly bled out to death in a public bathroom in a salon where she had her miscarriage, lost half the blood in her body. And when I first met Derek about a year and a half ago, it was a little bit after this happened, it was actually Anya who came up to me. and she saw me in an actually a Men4Choice shirt. Not it wasn't this one. I've sweat through a bunch of them, but it was a Men4Choice shirt like this. And I was with 6 of our guys, and we all had our Men4Choice shirts on. And she came up to me and she said, "Can you talk to my husband? He wants so badly to speak out on this, and he's so angry about what happened to me, and he has no idea what to do as a guy." And so we went and had coffee, and I think about Derek Cook, and I think about men like Josh Zarowski, whose wife Amanda nearly lost her life due to Texas's abortion ban, and seeing firsthand the cruelty and the threat to life that abortion bans pose by men who want to tell other men, you should care about this before it's your wife in your arms bleeding out in a public bathroom. And that is a message that Derek has taken throughout the state of Florida. He was on stage at the DNC nationally where Anya spoke, standing in support of Anya and taking that message to men about how this isn't an abstract issue and this isn't someone else's issue. Because he said to me that first time we talked, I never had thought about abortion much, but I can't believe what happened to my wife can happen in the United States of America. And it violates that basic sense of decency that shows how extreme this agenda really is, and how it is not about life. It is about control. It's about controlling women like Anya. It's about people like Ron DeSantis telling doctors what they can and can't do because of an extreme agenda that 81% of us don't share. And so I think Derek's been a champion. Josh Zarowski is another who comes to mind. But I give all the credit into the world to those men who have chosen to support their wives, who they saw directly suffer and nearly lose their lives due to out of control state policy.
I mean, that's again, every time I hear that story, I just get chills because it's just like, they wanted this child and to go to the hospital. And I mean, I feel bad for the doctor too, because the doctor's like, I want to help you. I want to do what I went to medical school to do, but the
Yeah,
government is preventing me from helping you.
yeah,
And if I help you, I may not be able to help anyone else ever again.
yeah,
It's just insanity. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day,
yeah.
the first thing that popped to my mind is just like, none of us are free until all of us are free.
Yeah, and if I could say one thing there, because obviously I've been talking about the men involved in this, there are women who have been leading on this for much, much longer, and that's part of the problem is that the women have been doing their part for a long time. It's the men who have been absent, and I think about what you just said about the Hippocratic Oath. Dr. Cecilia Grande is a doctor here in Miami, and she is so powerful in how she talks about when I became a doctor to help people, to save lives, I raised my hand and I had to take the Hippocratic Oath. And there's 4 elements of it. I think most of us know first do no harm, and there's 3 other elements. She goes, Florida's abortion ban forces me to violate every element of the Hippocratic Oath and potentially be at risk of not being able to serve my patients as I know how every single day. And it raises a really important question, which is, do you want trained physicians like Dr. Cecilia Grande operating under the Hippocratic Oath to be making decisions about what patients need? Or do you need men like Ron DeSantis who know nothing about the woman's body, who know nothing about women's healthcare, and whose main thought is how to try to win Iowa at some point in the future since he lost every county last time and thinks he's somehow going to be president someday? It's a no-brainer. Doctors should be making decisions with patients, and women should be in charge of their own bodies, not Ron DeSantis.
Amen to that. So, in that same vein, we know that I can't remember if he was from the State Department of Health or the attorney,
Me-
top attorney there, had basically written a letter telling this organization to cease and desist from running ads around supporting Amendment 4 and supporting pro-choice and supporting reproductive freedom. And the FCC, like basically the feds who
Mhm.
watch communications, are just like, no, no, actually, stations can run whatever they want, organizations can run whatever they want. And by the way, that may have violated the First Amendment. So, of course, dude's like mysteriously no longer in his role.
Right.
But be that as it may, what are some misinformation or myths that are out there that need to be debunked? Because I know folks go down a lot of conspiracy rabbit holes, or they may be hearing some talking points from the other side, and they're like, "But what about this? Full term abortions. What about that?" Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think the first and most important thing to remember is that Amendment 4 is not extreme. Amendment 4 brings back the standard that existed under Roe v. Wade for the last 50 years and does not take it farther than that. It returns the right to access an abortion to where it should be, between doctors and patients, and it takes government out of that decision up to the point of viability, which is exactly what we lived under for the last half century. That's the first point. The second point is that as it relates to parental notification, the language of the ballot initiative, the first sentence says, limits government interference in abortion up to the point of viability. The second sentence says, does nothing to change parental notification laws. And the opposition, with the support of the apparatus of the state, which is just outrageous, the opposition is running ads that straight up say, threat to parental notification laws in the state of Florida. That is a naked lie. That is like me telling you my blue shirt is orange. That is like me saying the sky is purple. It is made up, and it's plainly in the language of the ballot initiative, right there, plain as day. Does nothing to change parental notification laws in the state of Florida. It brings it right back to where it was under Roe v. Wade, which is where most Floridians want it to be, where it was for the last 50 years. And the last thing to think about is, as far as misinformation, is that the opposition knows the majority is not with them on this point. We do work in Arizona, and the first time I was out in Arizona working with our field team, their Amendment 4 is called Proposition 139. And we were going to the field site where we were going to canvass, and I was struck by the fact that there are all these highway billboards that say, protect women's health, vote no on Proposition 139. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, how weak does your argument have to be to know that the only way you can win is to blanket the highway in lies and create confusion? They know they're in a deep minority on this. And so what they try to do is create confusion. They try to say things about parental notification, or they try to say this is extreme. And the big one, and this gets into the third point, is they try to bring this to a place where, by raising the idea of babies and making abortions seem like it is about protecting children, they try to turn this into something it's not. People can have whatever personal beliefs, and do have many different beliefs about abortion. Amendment 4 has nothing to do with whether or not you personally would choose to access an abortion. As a man, that's something, especially as a gay man, that has zero relevance to me in a personal decision sense. It's that I think that that is a decision best made by women in consultation with their doctors, with zero room for Ron DeSantis in that decision. And they like to talk about what they call late-term abortions, which is not a medical term, by the way. It's a manufactured thing they've come up with, because if they can turn the conversation into, well, what about at 8 months and 2 weeks? Like, first of all, it just shows how little they know about women, that there's somehow this belief. They think about all the morning sickness and the toll on your, and it's, I mean, and that's something I'm never going to experience. And I have enormous respect for the effect that has on your life. That there are women going around having a pregnancy for 8 months and 2 weeks and then going, you know what, change my mind. That's not a thing that happens. 97% of abortions happen in the first 2 trimesters of pregnancy. And in that last 3% where abortions do happen later in pregnancy, it's usually women like Deborah Dorbert, who got notification that her child was going to have a condition called Potter syndrome and would be born unable to live, and the birth could risk her life. And so these are extraordinarily complicated decisions. It is not this bizarre kind of fever dream they paint, that there's some sort of abortion bonanza happening moments before pregnancy, because like that's not what women do. And come on. And to remember that your own views on abortion can be whatever you want them to be, but why do you or Ron DeSantis or someone in the Florida Department of Health or someone working at the Heritage Foundation who's trying to score points with his boss or whoever else it may be, why should those be the people writing the health regulations for the states and controlling the laws of the states, as opposed to doctors who actually do this and know this and women who actually experience it?
Yeah. Because the reality is, if you see an abortion, much like you said, that wonderful example that you gave, tragic but very on point, late abortions that happen later on are children that are wanted. It's
Yeah.
literally like this child cannot survive, or you will not survive if you give birth, or it is some surprise that you are, number one, you're dealing with whatever bombshell it is that the doctor delivered you, and then number two, you have to deal with making the decision of like, well, if I want to live, so I'm going to have to go down this path. And then number three, you're going to grieve the loss of the child because this is the child that you wanted. This is a
Yeah.
pregnancy that you wanted. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're just out of hand with this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, and that they've continuously moved the yard posts on what an abortion later in pregnancy is. There was a wide consensus for a long, multiple generations in the United States from the 1970s on that constituted somewhere between, the 24, 28 weeks, and then it settled on 24 weeks. And then Roe v. Wade gets overturned, and they start saying, no, after 15 weeks is an abortion later in pregnancy. Anya Cook had her complication at 16 weeks. Under the Roe v. Wade standard, she would have been able to get the care. But no. After 15 weeks is a late term abortion. And then they moved the yard posts even more. Depending on which state they are, they either go to 12 at that point or they go to 6. In Florida, they went to 6. And most women don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. And so to say that a woman who at that point, by the way, a pregnancy at 6 weeks is a clump of cells about the size of my pinky nail. And the idea that anything after that point is a late-term abortion is so deranged and shows how out of touch these people are, and they have no business regulating doctors and women.
absolutely. And at the end of the day, you know what? Abortion is a very personal decision, and it's not one that. And I think there's a myth out there that people use it as birth control, and that like they just take it lightly, and they're just like, oh, okay, well, oh, it turns out I forgot to take my birth control. Oops, I'm pregnant. I'll just go get an abortion. Like, the average woman or person that gives birth
Yeah.
isn't like very flippant about that decision. I mean, I've known close friends of mine that have had abortions, and they agonized over making the decision, and it wasn't like an easy flip, whatever. And
Sure.
they even are hesitant to talk about it publicly or
Yep.
even to their friends. So that level of like thoughtfulness that has to go into it like definitely reflects that this is not
Yep.
something that is taken lightly, and that women are just like, okay, I'm going to change my nail color and then I'm going to go have an abortion. Like, that's just not how
Yep.
people view it. And
Yeah.
your religious beliefs are, if you don't believe in abortion, fine, don't
Yeah.
have one. If you want to tell your children don't have an abortion, fine, perfect. I have no issue with that. Just don't tell me what should happen in my house the same way I'm not going to tell you what should happen in your house.
That's right. And you mentioned birth control, that the same people who are trying to ban abortion are then trying to ban birth control, even going after IVF and fertility treatments. And I think about like what you just said about your friends, Melba. I think about the fact that the other day, Gwen Walls, Tim Walls' wife, who went through fertility treatments, was talking publicly about how important that was for them and being able to start their family, and how shameful it is as a country that we're in a point where women have to tell that story publicly and justify their decisions publicly, including ones where they are trying to start a family, but also around any decisions they make. Because you said that people don't want to talk about it. For every Derek and Anya Cook, for every Josh and Amanda Zarowski, there are thousands that we're never going to hear about who are suffering silently. And everything that is good within us should shake and scream at the fact that state power is being used in this way. And it would be one thing if there was it would still be wrong, but it would be one thing if there were like some sort of consistency to this, right? Oh, we want to make sure that children are born, and then we're going to fund universal pre-K, and we're going to focus on the rate of maternal mortality, especially for Black women, and
That-
prenatal health, and this thing and that thing, and we're going to fund public schools. And they're against all of those things. They are in support purely of regulating how, when, and if people start families in every way they can conceivably know how. And it is so deeply wrong and immoral and out of whack. And only 19% of the country holds that position.
Exactly. So, Aaron, what are some ways people can get involved? I know you have a whole lot of huge action, days of action, and activities coming up. So, yeah, share with folks how they can get involved. In addition to just voting yes on
Yeah.
Amendment 4, there are other ways you can help.
Yeah. Voting yes on Amendment 4, of course. Voting as early as possible. If you're able to vote early, then the campaign can focus more on the people who haven't voted yet and getting those voters out. So absolutely vote yes on 4, vote as early as you are able. Second is that if you're listening and you're in Miami Beach, we're actually going to have a canvas this Saturday in Miami Beach. So you can find men4choice.org and you can get hold of me there. You can contact me at my email, aaron@men4choice.org. You can follow us on social media and get in touch with us there. And I'll give you my cell. It's 305-609-9632. Like, reach out there and I'll send you the RSVP link. And canvas with us. Come knock doors in Miami Beach on Saturday, because what the coalition has asked for is for people to take as many concrete steps as they can to directly contact voters. That's what's needed. If you can't come this Saturday at 3 p.m., and there will be food, there will be training. Derek Cook will actually be there speaking about his experience and then knocking doors with us. But if you can't be there on Saturday, this coming Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. On West Avenue. And again, reach out to me, 305-609-9632, and I'll get you the RSVP form. And we're going to hold an emergency information action session, a neighborhood conversation with the Miami Beach Democratic Club and Men4Choice, where we're going to outline the dire stakes of Amendment 4 and how important it is to end Florida's current abortion ban, and then outline all of the ways you can step up, including this coming Saturday. But there are lots of other ways. There's a standing phone bank on Thursday evenings. We have 2 upcoming text banks. There are going to be many more things that can be joined both in person and remotely. And if you can't come this Saturday, then think about what you can do. Because if all of us do something, that is worth so much more than everyone saying, oh, but I'm too busy, but I'm too this, but I'm too that. Because when we wake up on November 6th, are we going to be able to say we did all we can? And the thing that people like Ron DeSantis have done that is so damaging to the state of Florida is that they've taken away a sense of hope. They've taken a sense that our vote matters, that our voice matters, that our action matters, that we actually can do things if we talk to our neighbors and if we reach people. A lot of Floridians feel challenged on that, and I get it. It's a challenging time, but this is one where the majority of people are on our side, and we need to directly reach people at the doors, on the phones, through text banks, in every way we can to support the Yes on 4 campaign that is doing such heroic work to make sure that at the end of the day, the majority viewpoint of Floridians is what triumphs, and not the lies and misinformation and misuse of state agencies by a far-right governor who is out of touch with this state and primarily thinking about how he can run for president again. Badly, I'll add, but he'll probably, in his mind, he's going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And somehow he thinks he's going to win, which will never happen. But yeah, Aaron, you've laid out some really great steps that folks can take. I encourage everyone, listen, you may not be able to do a ton of stuff, right? You may not be able to knock doors, but listen, you could sit on your couch for 30 minutes while watching Netflix and do a text bank.
Mhm.
You can write a check for $25, $100, $250 to help support this campaign so that there can be refreshments, that there's water, that there's t-shirts and yard signs and all the things that are needed to raise awareness around Amendment 4. You can educate your friends. You can share this video with them and tell them, listen, we need to make sure that everybody in our family is voting yes on 4, and, be the one to just educate folks within your circle. Whatever role you can take, listen, there's a role for you in this movement. We got something for you. So definitely do something. Don't just do nothing, because without all of us coming together on this, we're going to let people that want to erode everyone's rights, because again, think about the old saying that, first they came for these people and I was silent, and then they came for these people and I was silent, and then when they came for me, there was nobody left, right? Because you stayed silent the whole time and everyone just kept getting swept up. So if we have a situation now where we don't have access to reproductive rights, that spills over to so many different aspects, because Roe v. Wade, as we see, it started with abortion, and then all of a sudden now we're talking about IVF. So what's next?
That's
Because
right.
there's something next coming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That they're going to suddenly ban and criminalize abortion, as has been the publicly stated goal for 50 years. Now that actually they're in a position to do it, very curiously, they're talking a different tune on abortion, right? For 50 years, it's been ban and criminalize abortion. This is no room for compromise. And all of a sudden they're so moderate and they just really believe in states' rights, which is, that is a great history, by the way. But I think about Star Wars. It'd be like if Darth Vader has spent his entire career trying to squash the Rebel Alliance, and then he's suddenly up for like the presidential nomination of the United States or the vice president. And he goes, actually, I want everyone to know the rebels are fine. I just really care about families. Give me a break.
that is the best analogy ever. And that is where we're going to end, because that is just pure gold. Aaron Bos-Lun from Men4Choice, thank you so much for joining me on Mondays with Melba, and for all the work that you're doing to protect our community and to make sure that everyone has a voice. Just thank you for everything.
And thank you for all of your advocacy and for having me on today, Melba. Appreciate it.
Anytime. All right, folks, you know the assignment, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.